Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Now, rebellions don't just grow out of thin air. They require many things like funding and resources, but more importantly, leaders and fighters. After the establishment of the New Order, the Empire began establishing a comprehensive network of military academies to find and train the most talented men and women in the galaxy to serve the Empire. Even in the most remote areas of the galaxy like Tatooine, the best and brightest were still pressed into service. Now, the first rebels were politicians, idealists, rogues, and criminals. Most of them lacked the military experience and discipline required to carry out an effective insurgency. But as the Empire's true nature began emerging, many of its soldiers, pilots, and commanders began questioning their allegiance. And so, little by little, the rebellion began growing out of the rotten innards of the Empire. Today, we'll be looking at 5 of the most important Imperial defectors who helped the rebellion on to victory. Before there were Death Troopers and Iden Versio's Inferno Squad, there was the legendary Storm Commandos. Initially created by the Empire to combat the growing success of the Rebel Alliance, the Storm Commandos were selected and trained by a talented Imperial officer by the name of Crix Madine. The Corellian officer was known for his innovative tactics and won the respect of his men by leading from the front. But as the war against the rebel insurgency went on, Crix began doubting his own role in the Empire. In Legends, Crix Madine and his Storm Commandos were ordered to release the Kandorian plague on the planet of Dental. The airborne disease killed 10 billion people within 2 days, and within 2 months, the entire population of the planet was extinguished. The horrible consequences of this mission pushed Crix to defect to the rebellion. Legends say he even left his fiancée behind without saying goodbye, in order to protect her. Madine became an integral part of the Rebel Alliance High Command and helped train other Alliance commanders and Rebel commandos. Madine's rules of war became standard operation protocol for Rebel ground commanders. It was broken down into 3 rules. Number 1, attack where the enemy is weak. Withdraw when encountering overwhelming force. Number 2, attack the enemy's morale. And number 3, use creative and unorthodox tactics. Madine would go on to plan the attack on the Endor shield generator and help direct cleanup operations on Endor against remaining Imperial outposts. After the establishment of the New Republic, Madine was placed in charge of New Republic Special Forces. Next up is Bodhi Rook, one of the members of Rogue One. Born and raised on Jedha, which kind of explains why he looks so shocked in this scene, Bodhi aspired to be a starfighter pilot and joined up at the Terraby Sector Service Academy, where he began flight training. But due to his low test scores, he was not allowed into the starfighter program. Instead, he became a cargo shuttle pilot. One of the things Bodhi ended up transporting were kyber crystals for scientists working on Project Celestial Power, aka the first Death Star's main weapons program. It was on one of these routine missions that Bodhi met up with Galen Erso, who told the pilot what the kyber crystals were actually for. Galen managed to convince Bodhi to deliver a message to Saw Gerrera's partisans. The message told the rebels about a design flaw he had hidden in the Death Star. With his message successfully delivered, Bodhi Rook joined up with the rebellion and became Rogue One's shuttle pilot and gave his own life helping the rebels obtain the plans that would expose the Death Star's weaknesses. Not every Imperial defector went immediately over to the Rebel Alliance, as was the case of Mandalorian warrior Sabine Wren. Enrolled in the Mandalorian Imperial Academy at a young age, Sabine was a firm believer in the Empire and followed her orders blindly. But as the Empire began tightening its control over Mandalore, Sabine began developing doubts. When she made her views public, her own family, Clan Wren, House of Vizsla, remained loyal to the Empire and cast her out. With help with her friend Ketsu Anyo, Sabine Wren managed to escape the Imperial Academy, and the two would go on to become bounty hunters. They hoped to one day join the Black Suns, but Sabine found life as a bounty hunter to be empty and devoid of meaning. And her partner Ketsu had become greedy and left her behind on a mission to die. Sabine Wren eventually found her way to the rebel cell known as the Spectres on the planet of Lothal and became a part of the rebellion. Besides being a terrific fighter, Sabine was also a talented artist who inspired people with her anti-imperial propaganda art. She would later obtain the Mandalorian weapon known as the Darksaber. The weapon had the capability to unite all of the Mandalorian clans, which could lead to a Mandalorian rebellion against the Empire. But we'll have to wait until next season's Rebels to see if that actually happens or not. Next up is one of the best non-force using starfighter pilots in the galaxy, Wedge Antilles. He started his career as a pilot flying cargo ships and working as a mechanic on the planet of Corellia. Bored of his mundane job, he jumped at a chance to join Skystrike Academy, a famous Imperial starfighter training center. Upon joining the Empire, he realized how cruel they were to their subjects. Wedge managed to get the attention of undercover rebel agent Fulcrum, and Sabine Wren was infiltrated into the Academy in order to make contact with Wedge and help him defect. Upon joining the Alliance to restore the Republic, Wedge was commissioned as a lieutenant. Because of his Imperial background, Wedge was oftentimes used as a disguised Imperial pilot on covert missions. During the Battle of Yavin, Wedge Antilles had several confirmed kills, including one TIE fighter that was about to destroy Luke Skywalker's X-Wing. Antilles would go on to serve with distinction along with Skywalker and Rogue Squadron. During the Battle of Endor, Wedge and General Lando Calrissian flew into the second Death Star and set off a chain reaction in the battle station's core. Wedge would go on to turn down several promotions to a command role, saying that he'd rather be a starfighter pilot. Disillusioned by the bureaucratic mess that was the New Republic, Wedge would go on to establish Phantom Squadron, made up of several Rebellion-era pilots. We're not really sure where Wedge Antilles is during the new trilogy. In Legends, he played a very important role in the New Republic, so hopefully we'll see him return in the next movie. Now, before we go to our fifth and final Imperial Defector, I want to talk about a few honorable mentions that were kind of left off this list. Thane Kyrell, a talented Imperial pilot who served on the Death Star. He defected to the Rebellion and served with distinction during the battles of Hoth, Endor, and Jakku. During the Battle of Hoth, his knowledge of AT-ATs helped the rebels identify weak points in the Walker's armored leg joints. Kyle Katarn, a legendary Imperial stormtrooper who defected to the Rebellion and became a covert operative and helped sabotage the Dark Trooper project. He was also a self-taught Jedi and managed to confront the dark side within himself and eventually became a Jedi Master. Very impressive. AP-5, an analyst droid and Alan Rickman impersonator who would become an indispensable part of Phoenix Squadron. Biggs Darklighter, a close friend to Luke Skywalker and wingman during the first Death Star trench run. Soontir Fel, a legendary TIE fighter pilot and Imperial hero. After being sent on a suicide mission for political gain, he was captured by the Rebellion and defected, but was later on recaptured by the Imperials and sent to serve under Grand Admiral Thrawn. He and his son would eventually join the Chiss. Alright guys, now back with number 5, Jan Dodona, the Imperial Defector who reached one of the highest ranks within the Alliance military. Legends say that Jan Dodona started his career in the Republic Judicial Forces during the Stark Hyperspace War. When the Clone Army was created, Dodona would serve as a bridge officer on the Venator-class Star Destroyer. With the proclamation of the New Order, Jan became one of the first captains of an Imperial Star Destroyer. But over time, he became disillusioned with the Empire and decided to defect. Dodona's first command in the Rebellion was the Masasi Group, one of the largest rebel cells created at the time. With his skills and experience, General Dodona steered his battle group away from destruction, narrowly escaping Grand Admiral Thrawn's attack on Chopper Base. Dodona would go on to command the rebel base at the Great Temple on the moon of Yavin 4. This would be the largest and most important base of the Rebel Alliance during the earlier years of the Galactic Civil War. It was from this base of operations that the Rebellion carried out the Battle of Scarif and the Battle of Yavin 4, which destroyed the first Death Star. The general would go on to serve in the Leadership Council for the remainder of the war. Without the help of these Imperial Defectors, it's very likely that the Rebel Alliance would have never defeated the Empire. This fit in with the Rebel Alliance's strategy, which was to win enough battles to encourage former Imperial worlds and subjects to defect to their cause. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. A special thanks to all you Patreon supporters out there. If you guys ever defect, remember, you're only a traitor if you join the losing side. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.